oops, I messed up. I'm going to use food to get me out of this place because it put me here. It was my worst enemy. I'm going to make it my best friend again. I'm going to mend my relationship with food. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bondi on Cheer. I'm Bondi, and here we have honest conversations about coaching, business leadership, and long-term athlete development and cheerleading. So today I have a special episode for you all. We're going to talk about my origin story and how I set out on a journey to get big and strong and healthy and somehow ended up the weakest that I've ever been, physically and mentally. So let me set the scene for you. I'm 14 years old. I want size. I want to get big. I started watching bodybuilding, and with a whole life of athletics behind me, I was familiar with conditioning. You have to do it when you're at practice for almost every sport. So I knew a little bit about it. I knew that you needed to work out to get big. And I decided, why not? Let's rock and roll. I am reading everything that I can, from dieting to exercise to supplementation. If it has to do with health and wellness, I'm trying to find it and I'm trying to read it. And unfortunately, because I was 14, I'm so young and ignorant, I thought, man, I got this all figured out. I got this in the bag. This stuff is easy, right? Watch me. And well, let me I'll wait. Let me tell a little bit more of the story, and then I'm going to show you guys a picture of what I look like when I was a year later. So this is my 1 year transformation. Okay, this is 14. I'll show you what I look like when I'm 15 after a year of doing this. So I wasn't in a great headspace in my life, and I think that had a lot to do with it. There's a lot of ways in which we can let trauma take hold of us, and trauma meaning so many different things, but just difficult life situations. And I think food is where I kind of got caught up. So I started implementing all the stuff that I was reading. I started controlling my intake more and more and more. I started focusing on my discipline more and more, controlling everything that I could. Nobody could tell me what I could and couldn't eat, and nobody could tell me when I could or could not exercise. So I started becoming slowly obsessive. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was starting to obsess over these things, what I was eating and how much I was exercising. And that looked like extreme calorie restriction, extreme fat restriction. I was barely eating fat. I thought that was going to kill me. I thought it was my worst enemy in my pursuit and journey to becoming healthy and big and strong. And I was exercising about 2 to 3 times a day because I thought that's that push, that's the grind, that's what everybody talks about needing to go through in order to get big and to get strong and be, this virtuous being that has strength and power. And unfortunately, I didn't realize it, but I was doing the exact opposite. I, through the undereating, sort of slipped into a bout of anorexia. And I've talked about this before in different places, but I was all of 116 pounds at the same height that I am now. I'm 5'11", 116 pounds. Okay, I was frail. I was so fragile, physically and mentally. I mean, a single gust of wind would make me cry. Would sit me down because I didn't have the strength to stand up. I was weak. I was exhausted. I was depressed. I was struggling in almost every way that you could be physiologically. And the worst part's the body dysmorphia that you get. So when I was anorexic, I was obviously severely malnourished. But I would look in the mirror and I would say to myself, like, man, you look pretty good. You're looking pretty fit. You're looking pretty lean, but we could probably lose a little bit of fat still. We could probably lean out just a little bit more, really like want to get shredded and cut. And that's what I saw in the mirror, except I look back at these photos of myself now and I'm like, what were you seeing? What did you see in the mirror? Because all I see is a sunken in child. Like my eyes were sunken in, my cheeks were sunken in. No part of me looked strong or physically or mentally capable of anything. And that's a really difficult thing to go through because you don't even know it's happening. You're not even aware of it. It just is happening. And I think that's the most sinister part of eating disorders and body dysmorphia and all of these things that you can slip into so easily when it comes to diet and exercise. And another thing that makes it so difficult is that you're online reading things from so-called experts, or when I'm 14 years old, I think they're experts. I don't know how to find good, credible information. I don't know how to find academic sources. I don't know how to find peer-reviewed studies. I don't know how to do any of this. And that's exactly what makes the internet such a dangerous place for young, culpable minds to be finding information and relying on information and just being there in general. It's a terrifying thing. And I unfortunately fell prey to it. But it taught me that nutrition isn't just information, right? It's applying this information, having the right mindset, applying information correctly. Because I'm not trying to say that there's anybody out there that's saying if you want to get big and strong, you should cut your calories to a third of what you should be eating, and you should only be eating 15 grams of fat a day. Like, it's just, I'm taking this out of the information because it isn't clear, and it probably isn't very well put together in the first place. But what I'm extracting out and what I'm applying, and then the mindset that I have when I'm approaching this stuff, is just it's the perfect storm, for me to be doing all of that wrong. Bad information, bad mindset, bad application. It's just terrible, terrible thing to do. Okay, so I want to show you guys this picture of me because I think this is going to be funny to share. I am convinced that I'm looking good, big and strong. I just could probably lose a little bit more fat, and this is what this is what I see. This is what I was looking at. So if you can believe that, I am looking at this version of myself, this poor, fragile version of myself in the mirror, and thinking, you look good. You probably look better, but you look pretty good. And fast forward, obviously now I'm 195 pounds, same height that I am. I've 16. I've put on 79 pounds, essentially of muscle, weight at the very least that I needed to have on, and here I am thinking that this is what I look like at 116 pounds, which is just laughable now. So I went through a transition period. I thought that I had everything under control. I thought that I looked good. I thought that I was doing what I should be. And I started hearing people around me saying, hey, Bonnie, you look a little bit skinny like my dad. And I was just like, man, you don't know nothing. I'm just living that bodybuilding life, whatever. And then teachers at school, high school, would be like, hey, Bonnie, you look like you need some meat and potatoes, poking fun at the fact that they see something that looks off. Like I said, my eyeballs are sunken in, my cheeks are sunken in. You could probably wrap your hand around my upper arms. Just frail. My clothes are fitting loose. I think it was fairly obvious to everybody else around me, but to me, oh, I'm doing it right. They just don't understand my journey, But one day my dad took me to the doctor, and I stepped on the scale at this doctor's office, and I didn't like the doctor at all, but I stepped on the scale, and this is the first time I've stepped on the scale in about a year, right? So from 14 to 15, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm not using a scale as a metric, right? Why? I don't know. Maybe I didn't have a scale. Maybe I didn't care what the scale said. I was just going off visuals, which is awful because, the body dysmorphia, it doesn't allow you to be objective. A scale is objective. You can't change a number. You get on it, you weigh what you do. So I stepped on the scale at the doctor's office, and I saw that I was 116 pounds for the first time in a year, and was like, holy cow. Now, I thought I had everything under control. I thought I knew a lot about what I was doing, but even in my fragmented mental state, I'll call it, okay, my sick mental state, my disease state, even I knew enough to see 116 pounds in the scale and say to myself, okay, that's not correct, right? Something is wrong here. And from that day forward, I said, okay, oops, and I messed up. Food put me in this place. And this is where the transition happened for me. I was like, I'm gonna use food to get me out of this place because it put me here. It was my worst enemy. I'm gonna make it my best friend again. I'm gonna mend my relationship with food. And in doing so, I met with a nutritionist. I started reading better information. She helped me find better information, how to find more credible sources. So I not only learned more about proper nutrition, I learned through experience what improper nutrition and what misinformation can do to you and what it can do to a person. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And at the time I knew that. So I made it a mission of mine, a goal of mine, to educate myself so I could educate others. And if I could even stop one person from experiencing what I experienced and going through what I went through, then that would make me feel purposeful. It was a meaningful thing for me, and so that's why I decided to pursue a degree in dietetics, to go study nutrition science at the highest level I could. It's why I continue to live and breathe health and wellness in this environment of a gym. It's why I like to coach. I like to help guide athletes down the right path instead of the wrong one. I like to do whatever I can. Even somebody like me that you look at and think, he has knowledge of nutrition. He has knowledge of exercise. He clearly has been able to take that knowledge and apply it, and it's worked. That was not always the case for me. So if you're somebody that overthinks nutrition, you overthink exercise, you struggle with exercise and nutrition, you're not alone. It is a very difficult thing to grasp. In fact, I think it's nutrition alone is one of the industries and one of the areas of research that we still have no idea. Right? There is no one approach. There's no universal. One group of highly renowned scientists over here says one thing, while another group of highly renowned scientists over here says a complete opposite thing. I don't know of another field where that happens with quite such a stark contrast that exists. How can one thing be true and the opposite also be true? Is this something that is just completely individualized? You know, there's approaches you can take that I think are smart, and I'm going to get to those in a second. But you're not alone if you're struggling with these things, okay? I went through it. It had its grips on me, and I'm just lucky that I was able to get out. So please don't feel defeated if you're somebody that just thinks that this is complicated, because it is. It's complex, it's complicated, and it is difficult, seriously, emotionally, physically, all of it. It's why I do what I do, okay? So I put out that exercise plan, and I want to piece together a nutrition series to go along with it. Now, nutrition is a little bit more of my passion. It is what gives me purpose. So I don't want this to just be like a quick raw shot video of, hey, this is how you should eat. It's not that simple. What I want to do is provide people with a basic understanding of how food works, how you should develop a relationship with food. And then once we lay down those fundamentals, I want to walk people through certain patterns of eating that have been shown to be effective with various goals that people might have, okay? And then I want to walk through how to apply those things and when to apply those things, okay? So this is going to be a long, stretched out nutrition series and course that I do in this podcast style. This is very important to me, and I care a lot about it. So just to dispel some of those myths before I get to actually put out the nutrition course content, the reason I put out that exercise protocol is because people need to understand you shouldn't be doing what I was doing, which is exercising 2-3 times a day. High intensity. That is crazy work. You need to build in time to recover, time to rest and recover. And I have a great analogy that I like to use that I heard one time, and I can't remember where, but let's say that you have a glass and you have a pitcher of water. The glass represents your hard work over time, okay? The pitcher of water is the hard work. So if I pour water into this glass and fill it up to the top, if I just keep pouring it, the water starts to spill out, and I'm sitting here and I'm still thirsty, right? In order for me to reap the benefit of pouring the water into the glass or putting my hard work in over time, I have to stop and I have to drink that water so that two things can happen. One, I'm hydrating myself. I'm receiving a benefit of drinking that water, right? That I worked to put into the glass. And I'm creating more room for me to put more water into the glass so that I can yet again hydrate myself, okay? We cannot just sit there and overtrain and overwork. It's not all about effort and drive, okay? More drive, more discipline, more effort is not always the answer. In fact, sometimes if we're doing the wrong thing, if we're focusing that drive in the wrong direction, then we could be doing ourselves a huge disservice. So you have to make sure that you have the right approach, the right tools, and you're walking down the right path, and then drive becomes a great component, a great tool in your arsenal. Nutrition, we should never be following extremes. You should never be following a diet that you cannot maintain over the course of your life. You shouldn't have to be cutting out any one thing, any one whole food group, any one macronutrient, which would be a protein, a carb, or a fat. You shouldn't be following elimination diets of any kind, okay? Unless you're dealing with some sort of allergy, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about for health and wellness. You shouldn't be eliminating whole food groups or whole macronutrients, okay? There are things that you can do. I tell people all the time that you should just start by eating whole foods. Focus on a whole foods-based diet. What does that mean? If you start eating foods that have 1, 2, maybe 3 ingredients, you know, the less the better, but obviously a food with 5 ingredients is not awful, you know, 4 even better, 3 even better, 2 but 1. An apple, for example, right? What's in an apple? An apple. What's in a banana? A banana. What's in a steak? Steak, right? It's beef, right? Ground beef, chicken thigh. It's just chicken. Like these one ingredient foods, you'd be best off trying to follow a diet like that than some sort of, you know, quick fix secret silver bullet diet that is it's the reason that your gut's inflamed. It's the reason you still have a belly. It's the reason you can't shed those unwanted pounds. No, it's not. No, it's not. The fact that there's still people out there doing that, it just blows my mind. That's not the secret. That's not the silver bullet, okay? People have stubborn belly fat, genetically speaking, because of lifestyle factors. It could be stress, lack of exercise, not a consistent approach to nutrition. And guess what? If you give them some crazy elimination diet, that's not going to make them consistent with their diet. It's going to demotivate them. They're not going to be working out as much, okay? It's not going to help with their stress. In fact, it's going to add to it. This just really like grinds my gears when I see this stuff still out there. The most important thing is that we're focusing on the foundation, laying a good foundation, which means consistent habits, okay? And I do have a series on nutrition out. It's a series I have 3 books, okay? Each one of them sort of explains a different side of nutrition, starting with just the relationship with food, starting with how much food you should eat, which comes with a nutrition calculator so you can figure that out, to more of the applied science behind it, okay? This is so that I'm covering all of the grounds and not just jumping to this part right here, which is like, well, you know, how much should I supplement this, or how much of this should I take? Or we need to start down here, right? We need to build our pyramid. We need to lay a good foundation. Everybody always jumps into the top. And unfortunately, it's just not what works. You don't have a good foundation, then this doesn't matter. This is going to lead to frustration, okay? And then we're going to fall back down here, all right? We're going to fall to our constraints. And that's what's important to understand. So I'll jump off the soapbox now. I feel like I'm just going to sit here and talk about my pet peeves with the nutrition industry, but enough of that. So everybody, that's it for today. It's a little bit of my story, and that's why I am still doing what I am, even though I entered different career paths, like many different career paths during college and after college. I feel like I just kept getting pulled back into coaching here because by building a platform, I'm able to actually now touch on these essential components, the nutrition and the exercise. And the reason that has to do with cheer, because I know this is Bondi on cheer, is that without these things, that we can only be as great an athlete as strong of a foundation we have. And nutrition, exercise, and sleep all are fundamental to our ability to grow as an athlete across different sports. But obviously, I'm talking about cheerleading. So that's what makes this relevant. That's what makes this still Bondi on cheer. So hopefully you guys took something away. Thank you again for listening to another episode. I'm really excited for all the things that we're going to put out, all the resources that we're going to put out. And until then, y'all, be happy, be safe, be healthy. I'll see you all in the next video.